Selfish DPS is a term that I actually despise. To be frank, it makes no sense to use it, and that phrasing comes with some obvious severe negative connotations, intentional or not. Yet, in many spheres in the 14 community, we use this term of selfish very commonly. In fact, speaking to players of all ranges, and I do mean all the way from fresh brand new to mmorpg to WoW veterans coming to 14 to casual raiders to some of the more veteran raiders, many people genuinely believe that these players are selfish, which I clearly view as being preposterous. This selfish terminology has extended all the way to even impact healers. Yes, healers. I really wish I was making this shit up. The two selfish healers are White Mage and Sage because they don't provide chain stratagem or cards to boost the damage of the party. Sage, more than any other, gets the brunt end of this because the Scholar brings Expedient, which movement speed buff for the party is obviously very strong, but the Sage instead has Icarus, which is a personal mobility ability. So yes, this is 100% impacting healers too. So let's define what a selfish DPS is, and it's really genuinely simple actually. It is a DPS that brings no utility to buff the damage of other players of the group. It is literally that clear cut dry. Do you or do you not buff the damage of the rest of the team? Now, people look at the term selfish DPS and may wrongly start to presume that this means no utility at all, which is absolutely false, as these abilities that I'm about to mention are actually very useful, actually mandatory if you're doing bleeding edge content. Say you are on Samurai, which is probably the most cited selfish DPS even though Black Mage existed before it. You have the roll action Feint, and at the very least that means every 90 seconds that allows you to help the party with mitigation. Obviously there are also going to be additional fringe scenarios like E8S, which is Shiva Savage, had the ads phase transition where leg sweep to slow down ads was very useful. I say useful as if it wasn't basically mandatory. Black Mage is another great example of a selfish DPS that brings utility as the magic counterpart, bringing the Addle debuff, or as I almost always call it still, virus. Old habits are hard to break, guys. Or if you look at the Machinist for the ranged physical DPS category that brings a 10% raid-wide mitigation for the ranged DPS role. For the record guys, I'm not so worried about semantics on that one since they all bring the same 10% AoE mitigation with their own flavor of name. But further from that, obviously reciting E8S's ads phase or E1S ads phase and a few other scenarios, obviously the silence was a fantastic additional utility that the Machinist or other ranged DPS would bring. On that note, let me go on a tangent here for like 10 seconds. Please make ranged physical DPS great again. I jest, but seriously, I really wish that their uniqueness was brought into the forefront of raiding again. So really the argument that these quote-unquote selfish DPS bring no utility is a pretty big falsehood and actually a very big trap, because these are very useful abilities that you should be trying to utilize. It is ultimately every member's responsibility to help manage incoming damage to some degree. Now obviously there are classes that bring even more utility, the most powerful and relevant of which I strongly believe, and talking to others they also agree, is going to be the Red Mage. On top of having the virus roll action, which I still miss having on healers to this day, Red Mage in Endwalker now has Magic Barrier, which is another way to mitigate AoE damage to the party, which is almost, it is very relevant in the hardest forms of content. Mitigation to ensure that you don't die from damage is extremely, and I mean very extremely important. You can recover health if you don't die, but if you lack the mitigation and you get curb stomped as a party, that's hard. Red Mage also of course has the instant revive, which helps relieve some pressure from healers when both of the healer swift cast is down. However, in the most pragmatic sense, speaking to people doing the actual ultimate fight right now, in the most bleeding edge content, if healers swift are down, both of the healers, in that short of a time span, a third revive probably isn't necessary because, to be honest, you're probably not going to resolve the mechanic, you're still dead. You're probably not going to meet the enraged tech, so you're still dead. Speaking to people, many people do weigh that the magic barrier mitigation is of high importance, but for extremes and savage prog, the revive is totally powerful utility worth mentioning. But in ultimate, if you are down that much, there might not be any possible way to recover with that. So that's why I'm saying Magic Barrier is a little bit weighed heavier. Obviously other notable examples exist, and I'm obviously not saying Summoner's Phoenix is useless or remove curing wolves from your Dancer's hot bars. All of that really does help. I'm not saying that that's useless or not meaningful, it is. but in terms of what I'm getting at, it won't outright assist in avoiding death like Magic Barrier could potentially do, or maybe 20% extra shields from the Bard could, for Scholar's Recitation Deployment Tactics, maybe that could get you past a particular bottleneck. But I do question the merit in saying that Reaper's Arcane Circle, which is small and definitely appreciated, but very small, heal utility makes them a so-called less selfish DPS than Samurai, to the point that we should cast judgment over someone picking Samurai over Reaper. Just to cycle it back real quick, is that at the baseline, every single job in 14 has some form of non-DPS utility. Some just have a slight additional non-DPS utility, like that Arcane Crest Reaper ability. I want to dive into the numerical analysis in the so-called selfish DPS part, and why this is outright silly to me. After, I'm actually going to express how these numbers actually fuel the argument that this is actually not playing a selfish DPS, because it's really quite simple when you get everything in front of you. So pulling up FF Log's damage for the current Savage tier and setting it to per second damage amounts, just because I personally can easily visualize with that, we can see, ironically enough, that Samurai at the top of this very chart is at the top of the chart, but now we have different rankings here, which are very important that not everyone is super aware of. So we have R DPS, A DPS, and N DPS. To prevent video bloat, I'll just focus on raid DPS, which is the easiest way to explain it. Is it's your total DPS contributions to the group through both your own efforts as well as how the group is utilizing your buffs that you're offering them. These are all of the damages that you can claim responsibility for, essentially. Obviously, that's not the perfect definition, because I can't really claim responsibility if someone's not using my buffs correct. I get it, I'm on the same page as you, but I'm trying to explain it simply. But about our DPS, this represents the so-called unselfish buffing classes, Bard and Dancer being the capstone, the prototype of it, fairly. Swapping to A DPS or N DPS, you can see very clearly that this is not a fair or accurate representation of Dancer and Bard. They are so far lower than the other jobs, it's actually kind of crazy. What you can see from here is that Samurai, Black Mage, Machinist, Sage, and White Mage are all doing damage that is in line for their category in the R DPS department. So you're ultimately getting roughly the same total contribution and damage to your group. So can someone tell me how this is selfish? At the end of the day, our mission is to clear the fight, right? So if they bring the same amount of overall damage, what's the actual problem? And now to a spicy point that will definitely rustle some jimmies here, is that in many cases, playing a so-called selfish DPS is actually an advantage for the group. Just emphasizing that because I don't want people to get lost in that. This is for sure one of those peace and love scenarios, but not every group that you're going to get thrown into, especially in Party Finder, is going to utilize your buffs properly. Speaking from experience, myself here, I can say going into an extreme farm where the other DPS are doing really poorly actually sucks. In all reality, this situation, swapping to the so-called selfish DPS of Samurai will undeniably massively improve your chances of clearing the enrage timer in that PF group, because you are now assuming and taking on all of your damage contributions yourself. You aren't giving them away in different buffs to the party, you're taking them all in yourself and saying, I'm going to represent everything that I have. And so in all irony, you are actually helping out the entire party this way, which makes the entire logical basis of selfish DPS snap in half and crumble. Which, kind of in conclusion, there's a few other points that I could bring up here, but I really think that I've covered it well enough. But like in conclusion for this video, it's really all of these points leading me to say that perhaps we should consider a different word for selfish DPS, because it flat out gives a wrong impression and it couldn't be further from the truth. A Samurai will still be using Feint to reduce incoming damage. Samurai will still be contributing damage to push that enrage timer. Yeah, that is really it for this video, and I'm really hoping that people find this topic interesting. This is something that has been brought up a few different times in my Discord server and just in YouTube comments here and there, and I figured why not make a video talking about it, because you know what, I do think this is kind of ridiculous. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and as always, take care and have a lovely day. And yeah, if this video helped you or in any way and you want to help support me and my content, please consider hitting that subscribe button with a thick cat daddy and cat daddying that subscribe button. Take care everyone and have a fantastic day.